Hi, this is Stephanie. You're listening to the Healthy Practitioner Podcast, where we talk health, wellness, and all things detox. Welcome back to the Healthy Practitioner Podcast. This is episode number 6, and I'm here today with Karli Weltzin. Hi, Karli.
Hello.
Okay, so let's dive into this. I wanted you here because you have such an inspiring story, and I want to share it with other people that might be going through different journeys and that can find connection within your story. So let's just go back from how far back you want to take it, but let's just do a kind of an introduction of your story and how you got started.
Yeah, so January of 23, I was 38. Yes, 38. Diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. I have 2 young children at home, and I knew immediately that I didn't want Western medicine's protocols. I knew just because I have such a background in like working out and knowing about nutrition and how powerful it is for the body and obviously the mind and all the things, but I just knew it wasn't going to be something for me. But what really set me off was when I was in the teach part of my chemotherapy and just like how they had like nothing to do with what the root cause was. And then also like they're like, you can drink pop and coffee, whatever. And I looked at my husband, we walked out of there, and I was like, this is against everything I believe in. And of course, like, you have fear. Like, the second you're diagnosed, there's nothing but fear running through your mind. And I don't think you can't get away from that, right? Like, no matter how positive you are, like, you still have those thoughts. But I've worked a lot through that. But I will say at the beginning, like, it was a lot of, you're just scared. And out of fear, you're like, well, what do we do, And immediately, we started looking into other options. I had a good friend of mine who is a massage therapist. Her husband saw you I don't know if he saw you or someone else at your clinic.
Okay.
But when you were in Dubuque for his diabetes. So she knew about your clinic, and then she saw Dr. Nasha's stuff, and she sent it to me, and then I don't know, she was like kind of my sounding board because we aligned so much on just all the things.
Sure.
And I don't know, from there, I can't say the rest was history because It definitely wasn't like a black and white decision, but we started doing high-dose vitamin C. I say we because my husband and I are just a team, like we made just the decisions together, but we decided to do like high-dose vitamin C to start off. I did labs with you, and then ironically, this is where I always just kind of look back, but we were going to Florida. We had a family trip planned at the beginning of February, and I was supposed to start chemo right before that because we kind of decided like, okay, we'll do chemo, but we're going to do all these other modalities to like balance it out and to, support my body through all the things. And then, so we had the chemo scheduled for the week of, so like on a Tuesday, we'll say, and then we were leaving like that weekend to go to Florida. And I was just like, whatever, like it'll be fine and we'll get through it. And right before, I was working out in the morning before my first chemo, and I got a call from the hospital, and they were like, your insurance hasn't pre-approved this, so we have to cancel it. Now I'm like, there's your sign. But in the moment, I was just like, okay, awesome. Like, I can go to Florida. I don't have to worry about side effects. I can enjoy this time with my family before things get crazy. And then, so we got back. And then my first actual chemo ended up being Valentine's Day of 23.
Okay.
It was a very romantic day.
Yeah, right.
But I did the one round, so just that one day, and I had terrible side effects. I mean, like the flu on steroids. It was awful. But I met with actually my chiropractor in town that night, and I had that lined up. Like, that was the first day he could get me in. It happened to be the same day as chemo, and I was like, okay. So I went in and we chatted, and he just kind of explained like his theory is like voltage and like the body heals, like all the things, and everything he said to me just made sense. So he had me start on like a detox essentially. And I think in the moment, like I didn't do a lot of research because there wasn't a lot on like exactly what he had me doing, but everything, like he had tons of resources for me to like, individually look up, and we looked up some stuff, and then we both were just like, let's just do it. And like, that was kind of when we made the decision, like no more chemo. And it was so hard. Like, that was an easy decision, but, dealing with, like the family, like explaining to your family, like I'm choosing to not do this, or explaining to other people just in the community, like, yeah, no, we're not doing this. So I was very quiet about it, honestly. Like I kind of just pushed off telling what I should have, and not what I should have, what they wanted to know. And I just kind of kept pushing it off. But, so I mean, from there on, I did the detox, and then I did other supplemental stuff through him, and while also doing high dose vitamin C and hyperbaric. And then, I don't know. The rest is I would say kind of history, like since then it's like full on metabolic now.
That's a really good story, and to really understand that you did take a blend of both. I was just talking about this on the last podcast episode that I did, of where sometimes we just go from one end to the other end, and we're like, oh, I'm not going to do any chemo or radiation, just like shut that off. And then you weren't, though. You were open, like, okay, I mean, if I'm going to do the chemo, I'm going to also support my body with these integrative things. And that's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think that's huge. I really do. Like, I think that's just the difference anymore. Like, and it's so unfortunate that it can't just be a blend protocol, right? Like,
right.
But, and unfortunately it's not covered under insurance, which is just stinks. But, I hope someday, right? Like,
yes,
I hope someday, but
telling
we never know.
Stories like this are the way that it happens, right? When people demand more, then the insurance companies should essentially be working for us, right? Absolutely. But it's kind of the other way around, where the insurance companies dictate, oh, well, you're not approved for that chemo. We're like, wait, how do you get to choose this? Yeah. Like, my doctor's telling me I need this scan or I need this, but insurance is saying that I don't need it. What? It's just so backwards right now.
It really is.
So when you made that decision after the first one, what did you tell your physician, and what did they respond with?
Well, that was another one I pushed off.
Okay.
I pushed it off until it was like right before my next appointment, and I basically just told them that I got really sick and I wasn't coming back. And they honestly, like, I really liked my oncologist. He was very open-minded, and he was pretty straightforward on, like, the side effects and like how it's not necessarily the best thing for your body, especially if you're not supporting it in the ways that high dose vitamin C offers you and other modalities. But they were just like, let us know if we can do anything, and they were always quick to respond if I needed them, which was great. So I will say, like, I didn't have any issues in that department. It was more like I made the issue myself, right? Because I was just scared. Like, I didn't want the pushback, because like other people's fears really were like bringing me down. Like, because it's so hard to do that on your own. And then when you have other people's fears kind of flooding in with yours, it's just too much. So
totally.
That was honestly the hardest part.
And how did you create space to allow yourself to feel the fear and not let other people's emotions? Was it just the denial, like not telling them, or what else did you do? Yeah,
that's tough. I definitely, because I'm a hairstylist, or I was, I'm really not now, but then I owned a business, so we live in a small town, a community that I've grown up in since I was a baby. Like, everyone cares, and they want to know, and I always understood that, but then it was just so hard to, like, try to get them to understand, because they haven't done the research that I've done, right? So it was like, you just knew, because it's everyone just sees the, this is what the doctors say and this is what you should do. And like, I've learned so much that, I don't know, I would say like now it's a lot different. Like I'm very much confident and I feel like I hope that my journey will inspire other people to do their research or know that there's other options, whether they choose to go completely, if they choose to also do chemo, totally fine, right? But like, no, support your body through it so that it can heal. Because if your immune system's shot, like how can you heal from all those chemicals in your body? Like,
yeah.
I remember, so after that one round of chemo, the next day, my husband drove me to Dubuque to get vitamin C infusion, and I did a 180, like instantly felt better. I actually went in and worked for a few hours once we got back, because I was wrecked. So, and that's where I'm like, man, I just wish like they could coexist.
Yeah. And there are people trying to make that happen, right?
Absolutely,
and
which is amazing.
Yeah, it's just the slow progress, and it can be really challenging to find the blend. Right. And then again, like you said, the people that are trying to sway your decisions are people that haven't done the research. And I think at first you're almost led by fear, right? And it's fear stops intuition.
Absolutely.
And so I feel just seeing your journey and how you've blossomed, I feel like you can stand in your power. And I think the biggest thing is learning that nobody has the answers except for you.
For sure.
And I don't know if you want to speak on that, but I think that it's really easy for people to allow other people to tell them what to do because they're in such a place of fear or victimhood, or a lot of it's just fear. Like you just want help when you're low.
For sure.
But that also can be very disempowering, and the person that's telling you what to do doesn't have to live in your body afterwards.
Right.
So I don't know if you want to speak to any of that.
Yeah, it's hard because I feel like, it always comes down to fear, but I don't know. I think until you understand how the body works, right? Like, and then like, it's not just a woohoo thing, right? Like, because I think that for me was what I was creating, right? Like, this is what I thought everyone else was saying about it. And when you do the research, it's so empowering to know how your mind controls so much. Like, just being in a high level, like high frequency, right? Like just that connection. I don't know. I've grown so much spiritually too. Like, oh man, like I always am like, it sounds so crazy to say, but I know that this journey came to me for a bigger purpose. And that has been honestly, that's what's given me a lot of light through it too, is like, I can see so many things that wouldn't have happened if this didn't happen. Like I would still be doing what I was doing, and that's okay. But at the same time, I'm like, I know that everyone's here for a purpose, and I think you get, like, I just was kind of stuck in the mundane day-to-day doing life. And I don't know, now it's like I feel like I have more of a purpose, and that's to share my journey to hopefully help other people.
Oh gosh, that's so good. And I mean, people don't know this about you, but I mean, what did you think? Like before this diagnosis, you bought your dream house, right? That you were going to live in for forever. And this is what you were going to do. And then talk about what changed after you got into this world.
Yes. One big decision we made was I was going to stop doing chemical services. So I just did haircuts. I did pedicures. I bought an ionic foot bath. I was like trying to add services, did a lot of formal updos and stuff, and then just kind of kept I like went from working 3 to 4 days a week to working 2, because it was like slashed, like a lot of my services were colors. So I had to rebuild that, and I never like fully did, but I cut back on that because I knew I didn't want to be around the chemicals. And even doing that, I was still around them because I was in the building, right? So I was like, you know what? I think it's also a blessing that I'm only here 2 days a week, and I can still. I always was like, what am I going to do? Like, I was trying to force that from the beginning, and I was like looking in the Terrain Advocate program, and then it didn't start to November, and I just kind of pushed that off, and I was like, I don't know, I want something more now. And then it's all in alignment now. Like, yes. I wasn't ready at that time, right? Like, I wasn't ready to like figure out what my next career was going to be, and it just kind of like slowly unfolded. But I started doing the Train Advocate program it was in November, and then I started taking a certification for a nutrition coach. And I also I'm started, but I've like put all my focus into the other two to get going. But then once these two are done, I will finish with a holistic health coach too. So just going to have those certifications just to obviously like learn more and like implement all of those into like this sweet little bundle of like helping people better their lives and their families. Like, the whole family thing is like, I think my big thing is like, you see so many people in like the diet industry or whatever, and they're always doing it to lose weight or be a certain number on the scale or a certain size, and it's like, it's all about health, so like they're doing whatever diet, and they're like not sharing those recipes with their kids, or they're not like, it's just them, versus, well, what am I going to feed my kids? Well, feed them the same thing that you are eating. Yeah. Because the earlier you teach them that, the less you have to break bad habits. And man, I mean, like my kids, I'm like, someday they're either going to love or hate me.
They're 3 and 5 right now.
They are 3 and 5. So my daughter, though, she's 5, and she's like, I don't want any junk food. I just want salads. I'm like, I'm very mindful of like not making it a negative thing, right? Like, I don't want to create bad behaviors.
Yes.
But we just like, how do you feel when you eat that? Because obviously, like, there are times where if we're around, or if we're out of our environment and we're in someone else's home or whatever, they'll get something that they're not used to, or like we'll have a treat of ice cream, and then they're going to the bathroom, and my daughter's always like, that hurts my tummy. So it's like, as long as she's aware of like how it makes her feel, like I think that's huge. Like, a lot of people don't even know that as adults. Like,
100%, Karli. Holy cow. Yeah. And they don't. And then they see their child that has a tummy ache, and they're like, oh, let's take you to the doctor. Oh, right. You need to be put on Miralax. Oh, and then like this, or you're not paying attention in school. Let's put you on this medication, because they're not aware that the food dyes,
medicine,
all of that. Food is medicine. And it's so good that you're teaching them from a young age, because this is what they're going to know and learn. And
don't you really think, though, that like, I've really noticed there's a shift in moms. Like, there are so many moms that they want to know, right? Like, what can I do to be better? And I feel like I probably see that a lot more now, because I have people reach out to me, and I love that.
Yes.
Like, the simple things that you can do that like they're never even gonna know, right? But like, look for these things in labels, because it's going to impact you and them and the longevity. I remember seeing that, kids born after whatever year like won't outlive their parents.
Yes.
And it's so sad. Like, and there's so much that we can't control, right? Like 5G and Wi-Fi and stuff like that around us, but like, the things that we can, like, let's do that.
Right. There's a huge momentum in that area of people that are trying to really change the course of our kids, so they do live long and healthy lives. And it's not just about longevity, it's about quality. Yes. We have so many kids that are getting diagnosed with cancer and autoimmune disease when they're young. Why is that happening? And autism, and like, what can we do to increase their quality of life?
Absolutely.
So it's just such a huge task for us. And I love that people are asking you questions, because you're such a great
honestly
person.
Like, I feel like those are always little nudges like to remind me to keep going and to keep sharing, you know, because
Yes.
otherwise it can be like, you know, you're just like, does anybody really care? And then it's like, okay, yes, people do.
And what if it was just one person that you
Exactly.
changed the trajectory of their whole family? It's
Exactly.
not, you're never just helping yourself. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about the Trainbased Advocate program that you're doing, because a lot of people aren't familiar with that. So, you know, you mentioned Naisha earlier. So you're referring to Dr. Naisha Winters, who has the book Outside the Box Cancer Therapy, or Metabolic Approach to Cancer. So that kind of, you said, got you started down this road to figuring out the metabolic shift. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the actual metabolic shifts.
Yeah, and like what you found, like reading her book, and like what you found doing the train-based quiz, and like how that started shaping the way that you were eating differently or doing exercising differently.
It's wild because I always thought I ate pretty good, right? Like I actually remember with you like when we first did our initial, we did the Train 10, and then you got your feedback from it, and it was like, you know, you should focus on keto because triple negative is diabetes of the breast. And I was like, I already eat pretty good. Like I'm not gonna like exert too much energy into that. And then like learning through the metabolic approach and through, you know, all my research, but just learning how powerful that is. And like, I think just because keto has a bad reputation, right? Like mainstream is like bacon and cheese, and like you're not getting nutrients. Where like there's a more nutrition-based keto that you should be following, like in general, but obviously if you have cancer too.
And talk about ketosis. Like, what does it mean to be in ketosis, and why is that a good thing for cancer?
Man, I just have to laugh because ketosis is hard for me unless I'm doing like an extended fast. But it's super important to cut the glucose, right? Like cut the glucose, fuel your body through ketones. And I think with my genetic SNPs, I have a hard time. But once you switch your fuel source to fat instead of carbs, essentially, then you basically are starving the cancer cells.
Right, because cancer cells love glucose, and they are the fastest. They divide really fast in our body, so they're taking up they need a lot of fuel to run. So if we can eliminate that pathway for them to grow, then that's the way that ketosis is supposed to work.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. And for you, okay, you thought you ate healthy, and then you had this shift. It's a huge shift for someone to go from, even if they're not standard American, but even if they're eating healthy, to go to this totally different healthy lifestyle and diet. How did you do that?
One step at a time.
What were the first things that you did? Did you go all in, or did you go, okay, I'm just going to cut this out and this?
So I would say initially, because I've like over the last 15 years, I've actually like, you know, I've tracked macros, like I'm aware of things. I didn't dive like full in. I started just by like cutting back on carbs and not measuring my ketones or glucose, but just cutting back, knowing that I shouldn't have a lot of carbs. And then once I was like empowered and advised to start tracking, like actually measuring my on my Keto Mojo. So that's where you do the glucose.
Who advised you to do this?
What's that?
Who advised you to do that?
Actually, Dr. Aaron did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that too, because people need support. So we'll talk about getting support later too.
Yes.
So you started measuring your ketones.
Yep. And honestly, it was defeating for me because it was hard. Like I said, with my genetic SNPs, it wasn't an easy thing for me. So I did do some, what are they called? Sorry, like keto IQ, you know, just exogenous ketones. I did some of that, and that helps.
And that was that liquid form?
It was. And, you know, you have to be careful, right? Like the ones that I got were expensive because they were good quality, but it's like, and then you're constantly measuring and whatever, but just to kind of get an idea. And actually, I just recently started wearing a continuous glucose monitor just to see like sleep patterns, to see like workouts, to see food, like to see as a whole picture, like where that where you see those peaks and where just like my average glucose is, because some days I was just like, man, is this ever gonna go down?
Sure.
I wake up and it's like not like highly elevated, but it's not what you would think after a 16-hour fast, because intermittent fasting actually was like a huge piece for me, right? Like I went from snacking and eating till I went to bed to getting up, and I don't know, I guess I would probably fast until like 9 o'clock or something, maybe 8, I don't know, it seems so long ago, I can't remember. But that was a big deal, was shifting and doing a 16-hour window of intermittent fasting, and then getting into 3-day fast too. And like 3-day fast is where I saw the power.
And you just came off of a 3-day fast.
Yeah, actually it was like
4-day fast.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, I feel good if I can get to 5, because my GKI was so low that I was like, this is what I need, right? Like I know right now my body needs that, and it was feeling good. So I was just like, I can do this. And I think once you get past like the 24 to 36 hour window, like you're golden. Like the first 24 is the hardest.
And starting. What do you do to get past the first 24 hours?
I always plan it around my schedule, so I'm busy. A lot of water.
Yeah, just distraction.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And honestly, like you realize how much you eat just because it's routine.
Yes. Totally.
Yeah.
I have a friend that always schedules a lot of nice self-care routines during that time. Like she'll get a massage. If she's doing a 3-day fast, she'll make sure she's getting a massage one of the days. And I'm just doing meditation practices, like just doing things that really help her get through it without, again, distraction and in nourishing her body.
For sure.
So I know it's hard for some people to get the concept around. So it's like making it, you went through it. You went from standard American to, and again, you said it was starting with a 16-hour window of, just not eating the other hours, which is pretty easy to do when you count your sleep time, right?
For sure.
And then it's just like always making one step better. Then maybe you go 14 hours and then maybe 12 and then 8. And then maybe you just try that 1-day fast.
Right.
And then you can extend it.
Absolutely.
So, I know that you said with the 4-day, you really started seeing your ketones shift.
Yeah, man. When was that? I feel like that was like 2 days in.
Cool.
And maybe even actually when did I start? I started Tuesday night, and Thursday morning, like my glucose was like 52.
You emailed me. I mean, you messaged me. You were really excited.
Day, or was that the day before? It might have been the day before that I even, like, honestly, if I don't eat for, a day, my numbers are fine. I don't know what it is. It's like my husband's always like, you can look at a carb and your glucose is going to go up.
And there's people that have constitutions like that. So I don't want those people to get discouraged, because people just quit if they see that there's not a number moving. But what a scientist just really came out with not that long ago, of saying, like, even if the shift is downward, you might not be in full-blown ketosis, but you're still at that cancer-fighting effect, even if you're not reaching that, especially if you have specific SNPs that are not allowing that. There's different pathways that are that fuel cancer. There's iron pathways. There's these different types of pathways. So if we can just lower the access for cancer, even if it's not full blown, we're at least decreasing their ability.
For sure.
I also, with people that have this type of constitution, I also look at their stress levels. So it's like food, strength, and nutrition and stress.
Yeah.
So like, okay, so your diet is keyed in and dialed down. You're strong. You have muscle mass. Some people don't. A lot of people have adipose, and just getting more muscle will decrease their insulin resistance in their body, because that fuel source is going to their muscles versus going to feed the fat cells, going to feed the cancer cells.
Right.
And then there's stress, and that's one that we don't look at.
Yeah.
And if people are in a high state of stress, that's an insulin trigger, and they will never get into ketosis if they're in a high state of stress.
Yeah.
So if you want to, I don't know if you had to work on that stress aspect in your and strength. Like, what did you do in your body to change stress and strength?
So I've worked out for a while, and it's always been like 5 days a week. And then I was advised, like, vaguely to like do more HIIT and do, just make sure there's movement every day. And I think because I was already doing something, like that wasn't my main focus, because I was like, okay, I've already got this. But now I'm like, oh, it's really important to not overwork out. Like you see a lot of people, and I was the same way when I started, like exercise great to fight cancer, right? But then it's like if you're overdoing it, your body doesn't have a chance to heal, right? So that took me a year and a half to learn.
Yes.
It was probably, honestly, the beginning of this year I learned that, and I was like, okay, I have to cut back. So I do 3 days a week of CrossFit-ish style, but not like extreme CrossFit. So I just make sure it's 20 to 30 minutes, never more than 30 minutes. And I try like once a week to make sure there's cardio involved. But honestly, like using dumbbells or I don't have a barbell right now because we're living in an RV, but otherwise, like those things are what I prefer, right? So, and I feel the best when I do them. And obviously, like you said, building muscle is so important. So I had that dialed in, but then like really understanding the impact of over exercising was very important. And I think it's probably not looked at like it should, right?
I think that that's very common for everybody. So again, it's that pendulum swing of like, okay, being sedentary and not moving to doing the extreme of to where your body can't heal. And both sides are not good. It's like finding that healthy balance is so important.
Absolutely. And I'm just like, okay, if I'll go down to 3 days a week, and then those other days just make sure I'm moving. Go for a walk. Like walking, right? Just so you're not just sitting on the couch potato, doing whatever, scrolling through Facebook.
Totally.
So I try to just be mindful of that, but also to not overstress it, because it's hard when I've, for probably 15 years, I've been a 5-day-a-weeker, unless I was postpartum, then I wasn't, right? But like most of the time, like that's what I've done. So it was hard. It's hard to shift that mentally, because I've been so programmed to like, you got to do this to do this. And, I don't want to lose what I had either. So it was hard, but I feel good about it now. And I follow a program that I can just do at home. It's street parking is what it's called. But they offer daily workouts, and it's super affordable. So I just do it outside of our camper, and it's perfect. Yeah.
Good. I want to go 2 directions with that, talking about why you're living in a camper or RV, and let's first go to the stress part. So nutrition, you got dialed in. Strength, you got dialed in. Stress.
I think I could probably still work on that.
Okay. And let's talk about where you've came from to where you're at now.
Yeah, man, definitely. Like, well, first of all, I look back and I'm like, I was a business owner. And I think my biggest stress has always been the internal work that I needed to do, right? On a personal development level. So like I created stories that caused me stress, right? And I think along this way, like I've learned so much just about like the fight or flight and like parasympathetic and sympathetic, like just trying to balance all of that, and then like really diving into the emotional side has been really big. And like, I think once you start to like peel back the layers, I'm like an onion, right? Like every time I go a little deeper, and it feels good. Like you just keep using those tools to get better, and they do make a really big difference. And I will say that it's definitely going to always be a work in progress, but I've came so far, and I love it too, because I feel like it's kind of contagious, right? Like the people around you, and then like for me, most importantly, is my kids. Like I don't want to be that mom that snaps because I'm overstimulated. And obviously, like with a diagnosis, like I was overstimulated. Like,
totally.
It was super easy to just, be in that state, but like you were way more aware of it, so you could make changes. But even now, like, like control what you can and let go of what you can't. And like, like I've really gotten into like being more in tune, because then like you said, like you can feel your intuition more when you're like listening to your body and you're in silence and you're focusing on your breath and like just being inside your body and calming down the mind. It's been like I said, a work in progress, but like that's like my main focus right now. Is I know like my inner child needs healing. And and that's nothing to do with my parents, right? Like, I think I've always had this guilt of being like, yeah, my inner child, but it's like, it's not about my parents. It's about the stories you create as you're going through your life, and really healing that and understanding, like, it's, you know, it's, I don't know. I'm just a spirit here, living out this journey. But yeah, so I don't know. I think I just went on a 180 there.
No, that's beautiful. I mean, I think that there is a big component of cancer that we don't talk about, and it's the spiritual aspect, or that emotional, the childhood, healing the child, that like these things that were in us that gave us the gifts of whatever dis-ease that we have in our body. And I always ask patients when I know that they're empowered enough to hear the question, but it's like, why did you get cancer? And usually when they've done the work, they can say, well, and it evolves over time too. You might, as you grow, you find different things like, ooh, that also played a part. Is there something that you feel like, wow, this is what set me up for this diagnosis?
Yeah, I feel like that's so loaded, because like you said, like, you kind of figure out more things, but deep down, I know mine was emotional. Like, I just know that, like, you know, like growing up and with divorced parents, like, you always just have different dynamics, and I've created whatever stories, and like, you know, abandonment feels like a triggering word now that I've like, and not that my parents abandoned me, right? It's just like, as the child inside of me, like, that's how I felt. And I really think like just learning all of that has been just, I don't know, it's been a wild journey, and I love it, and I love being in it, because it feels good to be at that level of like really just listening to yourself and like understanding yourself, because then you have more compassion for other people. So
and you know, you just said emotional. You think that the root was emotion, which I feel like my autoimmune disease was definitely emotion. I mean, it's the perfect storm, right? It's always the perfect storm.
For sure.
But so many people, we go into the medical world and it's a physical treatment, right?
Yeah.
Like, what if it was an emotional treatment? Like, we have to, now it's physical. It turned physical, so we're going to have to do some physical things. But what about that emotional component? And we typically, especially Western medicine, we don't look at that.
For sure.
And even in integrative medicine, we don't do a good enough job with that. But it's just like, what are we going to heal emotionally that brought us to this point of dis-ease?
Yep. I think it's such a big piece. And I think, honestly, like, when you're saying the integrative part, it might not be looked at because patients aren't ready to look at it, right? Like, I know from my story, from my journey on this, like, if you would have told me to look at all this at the beginning, I would have been like, whoa, like, like, no, like, can we please just heal me?
Yes.
But understanding, like, that's the healing that needs to happen to get to, you know, I am actually going through a program right now. It's 6 weeks long for emotional healing. And, you know, she's just like, you have your root cause and you have all these branches, and you just got to chop the branches off and basically reprogram your mind, right? And
wow.
It's empowering, and it's nice to know that, like, there's always something we can do, right?
Yes. Feels really like it takes that victim out of it. Like, you have to do this to survive. It's like, ooh, I actually have my own tools in here that I can use, that are free. Yeah. And that I get to use.
Yeah.
When did you feel in your journey that you were ready for the emotional stuff? Like, how did that come about? Do you remember?
I honestly, as soon as the diagnosis happened, something inside of me was like, I think this happened for this reason. And it was like me feeling a lack of something. And then can't say I focused on it, but I recognized it. And then I pretty much was like balls to the wall on doing all the things.
Is that your personality?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, just growing up, that's what you're just the go-getter. If you're told to do something, will you go towards that, or will you go opposite, or you just do your own thing?
I usually am like fully in when I do it. And I think I've understood the healing, but I think because I was overdoing it. If I think about it now, I'm like, all right, I think like sometimes less is more. And that's a hard pill to swallow when you're the person that like just goes. But yeah, just learning to like be present has been empowering, but like I would say the more emotional stuff has been more recent. So I did do that ketamine journey with you, which I think that was probably more the beginning of like when I was like diving more into, okay, I want to understand, right? Like what's my bigger purpose, or like what's like all the things that, I don't know. So that was an interesting experience, right? But we won't go down that rabbit hole. But.
We talked about that in the last episode. I feel like in all of these episodes, we sprinkle in ketamine accidentally, but really again, there's this connection to a higher part within us that a lot of us in this world don't get to experience. So when we do, it's just like, ooh, okay, this stuff makes sense now. It's not as scary when you can connect to your greater person, right?
Yeah, man. And I think like when I feel that connection, like I feel alive, right? And as soon as I start to feel like, let's just say a low frequency for reference, but like when I start to feel that way, like I'm like, okay, like what makes me feel good? And it's like taking deep breaths, talking to the universe, asking for signs, asking for whatever. And like that has really helped me connect, I think, and helped me not feel alone, or like not feel overwhelmed or scared or whatever. Because like, you know, I'm still fighting and I'm still healing, and so there are good and bad days, right?
Yes.
And I think that's something really important to emphasize too, is like this isn't like this linear journey. It's very much day to day. Like you got to work hard, and I shouldn't say work hard, right? But like you just got to work intentionally.
Intentionally. Oh, that's a really good word. Let's talk about your journey through finding practitioners for your team. So we're going back. You're deciding you're not going to do traditional medicine. So that means your oncologist is like, see ya, call me if you need me.
Yep.
They're not going to say, here's an alternative path, right?
Right.
So how do you find the way to your current mentors, teachers, healers that you...
Yeah, and so many healers, right? So like, obviously here has been the biggest piece. And then I honestly, once I got into your clinic, like aligning with like-minded people was like really empowering for me. But then like I did, acupuncture was a big one for me. So finding an acupuncturist that, you know, worked, I don't know, in less of a relaxing way, but more in a like therapeutic way.
Sure.
And then, you know, I implemented things like relaxation, so massage, and as far as a team goes, you know, like I started with you, and you referenced out Dr. Erin, and so I had her on my team, and then I've referenced out from her and had another doctor in the metabolic approach to help me. So you know, I don't know. It's an interesting thing to be like, who do I talk to? But
yeah,
they all kind of serve their own purpose, and it is cool to have a team. I'm trying to think, as I feel like there's another big piece that I'm like missing as far as a healer goes. But I got into mediums too.
I was gonna say, I know that you've done some mediumship, and that has been helpful or encouraging to you.
Very much so.
And I guess talk about that. Did you have preconceptions prior to seeking out that, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I guess, but I've always looked at that as like, oh, I haven't lost anyone close to me. I don't need to talk to anyone. But realizing it's more like spirit guides, and it's, you know, it's deeper than just like having someone that you've lost tell you a message. So, I mean, I've seen two, and you know, they both had different things, but like seeing that there was my future in that, in a reading, is still powerful. Like even like any days that are scary, you're like, no, I heard this, so this isn't gonna be a bad thing, right? So that has been really big for me.
I think that is, I know we talked about that just recently, like even with my own stuff when I was going through scary times, it was like, I know that this was before Lainey, I was like, I've talked to my spirit babies before. Like, I know, and how woo this sounds to some, it doesn't matter, because when you're at a point of despair, it doesn't matter if you're making this up and it's all a lie. Like, it's the point of connection, whether we believe in God or the universe or whatever our sources of inspiration. Babies, like having human lives here was my source of like, you can get through hard things. There's this beautiful family that you have on the other side of this distress.
Right.
So always, yeah, like even like the astrology charts, I've done different astrology readings, and it's like, oh, I know I'm going to be okay because I know that this is in my future. And hey, maybe it's not. And I'm just thinking that, but it doesn't matter because it's getting me through my present. It's bringing me back to center.
And you know what? If it's a manifestation thing,
yes. And when we
all win.
Totally. Yes. Oh my gosh. So I'm glad that we had to touch on that, because again, there's the fine weaving, like when we're doing all of the things, it's all of the things. And, you know, like you said, what gets you through really hard times, and that seems really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you were so you started working with Erin, she recommended, and this was virtual, right?
Yep. So she's out of Ohio.
And you were in Iowa at the time, or you were in Wisconsin at the time. Illinois. And then she recommended you. In the midst of this, you were thinking about with your family to maybe make a big transition of moving.
Yeah, so that was actually before the diagnosis.
Okay.
We've been talking for years about how we would love to, and it's always been in my court because I'm always like, no, I can't leave. And then, you know, over the years, it's slowly like my blocks are gone, but we were actually going to move last year. We said like the spring, and then we were like, we better wait for this diagnosis before we like put our house in the market or anything, to see, I guess, the results of the biopsy. And then once we got the diagnosis, I was like, yeah, we're obviously not leaving right now. And then it kind of just got to a point where it was like, this is our dream, you know, and like, why not? And everything's figure outable. And I think I want to touch on that now too, because I'm like, no matter what, I feel like it's always going to pivot. So it's like, I can think like, oh, well, what if I need this, this, and this? Well, figure it out when it comes, and if it happens, then yeah.
I think a lot of times people think of like the scariest things that could happen, and that's what stops them from actually living their dream or living their purpose.
Yeah,
because
absolutely. What
ifs, and then it's like, well, write down what is the scariest thing.
Yeah, or what if that doesn't happen?
Yeah.
And what if it's the best decision of your life?
Exactly. I mean, really think about like the things that have the scary, like back in the day when you were diagnosed and the fear that went through your body. And like now you're like, wow, it was actually the thing that I needed to make me on this track of true purpose and alignment.
It really was. It's awesome. Like,
just saying that word, you would have never said that word a year and a half ago.
Right.
You would have never thought that.
Right.
And there's things that happen to us in this day. And I always tell my friends that whenever there's something really hard going on, I'm like, write it down in your calendar, like a year from now. So June 2025, write down the thing that's scaring you the most in your world today. And then next year, there'll be a little alarm that comes up in your phone on your calendar, and it says, you're like, holy cow, I was scared of that.
Right.
That's not anything in my existence
it's
anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just the things again to like, okay, get that out of your system and focus on the present moment.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, you and your family unit are just amazing, because a lot of people would never make that journey.
Yeah, it's crazy. And honestly, it's so crazy to think of all of the times where I was like, no. And all of the stories I came up with of why it couldn't work. And now it's like, we love it. Like, my kids love it. We love it. I mean, we're still figuring it out, obviously. But
well, let's like paraphrase this. Like, you know, when you were first thinking about moving, you didn't know if you were going to move to like an hour away, right?
Right. Yeah.
Versus tell them, like, they kind of give the story. So Erin recommended you get some intertumoral mistletoe injections.
Yep.
From Doreen, a clinician in Florida.
Yep.
So how did that transition go?
Yeah, so that was honestly going to end up, it just kind of worked out. Like our house was already on the market. And then she said that, and I was like, well, we had already planned to live in an RV because we knew like it was going to be the easiest transition to move. And we also were like, maybe we'll travel if we can. Like we didn't know, like it would just sounded the easiest way. But then it was just kind of worked out really well. Like, okay, we can go to Florida. We have our house. We can stay as long as need be. So we went there not knowing if we were going to be there 4 weeks, and it ended up being 11. But like, it was so convenient to just have our home. And then once that treatment was done, we moved to South Carolina, and that's where we're at now.
Okay. Yeah. And that just happened in the past couple months, right?
Yeah.
It's very recent.
Very recent.
And you said that you like it. Like you guys are enjoying the RV life with 4 people in an RV and 2 young kids.
Yeah. Some days more than others.
I'm sure. How do you do that? How do you find time for yourself when when it is stressful and...
See, and I think that's, that's the part where you're constantly like pivoting and figuring it out. But, like when my husband gets home from work, I'm like, I'm going to go for a walk, and I'll put my headphones on and listen to a podcast that's empowering or do whatever. Or in the mornings, I'll try to get up before them. The problem is my daughter sleeps with us or with me, and then our son sleeps with him. Yeah, it's RV life, whatever.
Parent life.
I try to get up before them, but as soon as I do get up, a lot of times she wakes up. But if I can, I try to do that to get like a meditation in and just like set my intentions for the day, or even journal. So it just kind of depends on where the time window is. But when I do that, like it just sets the day up better. And then, it's like, then you can focus on doing the mom things, like making protein waffles in the morning or whatever it is that, they're constantly asking you as soon as they wake up. So it's good. It just sets me up better, but it does give me that time to, be by myself. And there are times where I'm laying on the bed in the room with my leg pushing the door shut while my kids are trying to get in, but I just like
real life mom life. You can never go to the bathroom alone again,
right?
Oh my gosh. Well, okay, you said protein waffles, so let's just go to that, because I know when we were talking about diet and like getting your kids buy-in, people always think that they have to go from A to Z, super extreme. But what I've found is most successful is when people can just make the little changes. Yeah. So maybe they're doing conventional pancake waffle mix for their kids, and then they change to a gluten-free, higher protein mix. And then they change to a grain-free mix, and they're doing half and half. So they're still mixing their prior one in, and it's palatable to their kids. And it's just like when you're changing your diet, as your taste buds change, then all of a sudden these foods that you would have never even combined before, like all of a sudden they become more palatable.
For sure.
So with your kids, so just because they might not have been raised the first few years or to their teens of their life that way, it's not too late for them, right?
Absolutely. And honestly, I think like what you said, you just nailed it. Like you got to just slowly transition and not do all of it at once. And I think a lot of people just put a negative view on it too, right? Like they're going to assume it tastes bad, or they're going to, I don't know, like if there's not sugar in it, it's going to taste terrible. I mean, and there are alternative sugars, right? Just like your table sugar, it's just terrible.
Right.
But like coconut sugar or monk fruit, like, there's other options. So
yeah.
But my kids, they don't have any problem. They love my waffles, and I'm always like, are they actually good? I've tried one. They are. But like you said, the palate's huge.
Yeah. I love that you're doing this as a family, because like you said, it's not, I see the most success with all my patients when it's an approach where everybody has buy-in, from the partners to the kids. Like it's a team thing. And when you can do it together as a family, how powerful is that?
Absolutely. I'm grateful all the time for my husband, because he's always willing to eat what I make. And he's always supportive in that. And then he's also like, we do ice baths. As soon as I was diagnosed, actually, it was right before, we ordered an ice bath, and I was like, okay, let's try to do this, like commit to it. And then the diagnosis happened, and then he researched, and he's how important powerful that could be towards it too. And so we just started implementing it, and he started doing it with me, and
Wow.
we're a team, which is awesome.
I have such a great team member too, and I can't imagine going through a diagnosis without a support. So I don't know if you have the answer for this because it's not you or my case, but what if you didn't have someone that was supportive like that? How would you navigate that? Or do you know people that...
Man, I don't know, because your environment's so important, right? Like, I don't know.
When I lead my 3-day cancer resets, I would say 90% of the people have been either in a failed marriage or they're in a current relationship that isn't helpful to them. And to me, it's just being honest. Like, you're not going to heal in a toxic environment. Just as I tell my patients that are sick from mold, I can do all this stuff to detox mold out of your system. But if you're still in that moldy environment, you will always be sick from mold. If you're in a toxic relationship, no matter what you do, if they're not supportive of you, if they're not encouraging you, you will always be sick because you need that support. And
Absolutely.
If you're not, you're the only one that can provide the support for yourself, right? It's really nice to have cheerleaders next to you, and definitely no haters.
Right.
And so if there's anybody that is not in your lane, then you have to make really hard decisions to be okay with being by yourself.
Yeah.
And figuring it out.
Yeah, you gotta set boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, and I even have always thought that way just on raising our kids. Like, we're on the same page, and if you're not, like, someone has to give, and it's, I don't know. I'm very grateful that we don't have to struggle through that. I mean, because there's even times where, like, like my meal's completely different than them, but their meal's still healthy. Mine's just keto, like very keto. So, I mean, even that's hard, but
totally
make it happen, man.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to touch on just a couple more questions of, like, you said you're a train-based advocate coach. What does that mean? If someone is seeking your support, I can tell you from a clinician's support what I love to see from you. But tell people what you're here to do.
Yeah, so I know when I was going through it, I wished, I know they were available then, but like having that support system to help you understand your labs, understand the supplements and all of the things that your clinician wants you to implement. I'm that person that, like, bridges that gap where, like, the clinician is busy, right? Like, you're busy helping all these people, and you have to set boundaries on, like, you can't constantly have emails coming through. And, like, being on the side of it that I'm on, I know, like, you don't want to wait another month to have this answered. So, like, that's where I love where the advocate comes in and can be that, like, weekly check-in for somebody to help them get through and just have that, just the connection, and then the support to, okay, what are your struggles this week, and how can we help you understand or implement it better, versus waiting. And then by the time your next meeting with them comes, like with the clinician comes, you've already, like, either completely not done what you were supposed to for 3 or 4 weeks, or or you're totally, you forgot that it happened and you never address it, kind of thing. But so I really want to be, I don't know, just that support system, so people, feel heard and feel that connection that they need, because they're always going to be in that fear base too, so I really think it's helpful to have that person that you can reach out to that understands the program, understands what you're doing, and just can kind of, even if it's just repeating it, hearing it, I think is so powerful.
So good. And I know we've had this discussion a lot about what integrative cancer care is missing, what all cancer care is missing, but I think it was I think one of your biggest issues was, like, the not having that direct one-on-one support and feeling lost in the muck of everything. And I do truly feel like the Trainbased Advocates are trained by like the Metabolic approach. So Naisha, Dr. Naisha Winters, as we were talking, I'm trained by her in her program. And so the Trainbased Advocates are people that the labs, like you guys are trained at a very high level. So I get to, as a clinician, give the higher, like, okay, I'm looking at your scans, I'm looking at your labs. These are the things that I want Karli to implement. And then the Trainbased Advocate gets to help you with that. Set up your schedule, teach you how to do mistletoe injections if that's part of your plan. Like to do things so that you're, like you mentioned, not waiting 3 to 4 weeks to get to the clinician call and realize that you weren't doing things correctly or that you didn't implement things because they were so overwhelming.
Right. And I even know, like, there are times where I'm like, oh, well, who's doing this? Or like, do I need to have my garden ordered or, to get more labs done? Like, just to have that person that's always shadowing like your next steps and making sure things are getting done in a timely manner.
Yes.
Yeah, because like as a cancer patient, like you don't know.
And you don't want to know. Like you don't want, you want to know, but you don't want to have that responsibility of like your full-time job is truly healing.
Yeah.
And so worrying about insurance, worrying about tests that need to be ordered, like that stuff can just get in the way and can be a form of stress that we don't need. So I know that it is a work in progress with my clinic and the way that I'm running a practice, but with people like you that are Trainbased Advocates, because that's the only people that I'll hire because you guys know the way that I practice.
Right. Which is so important.
It is so important because I can't just tell you I can't speak enough to the importance of being on the same page with your extensions of you. You as a TAP member for another patient of mine, like you are an extension of me. So you need to know how I operate things to be able to best help that patient and give it your own little flair. I love it. I'm so excited for this.
Yeah. And I just think it's such a piece that I missed, and I wish I would have had. So I hope it's helpful, and I know it will be, right? Like,
yes.
I just know that's a big piece. It's just a big gap. And I think bridging that's going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm. You're finding the way, and you're doing it through your own realization of what was missing, and that can be really beautiful too.
Yeah, right. Like being on the journey myself. Like once you have your own journey too, I feel like you can serve your clients better too.
It's amazing. Okay, I have a couple of bonus questions that I'd like to ask you.
Yeah.
Are there any specific, like, I don't want to say cancer advocates or people that are in the cancer field, whether they're practitioners or people that have been diagnosed with cancer that you really look up to and mentor, like that are mentors to you in this journey?
I am a Instagram person, so I feel like I follow a lot. Sometimes I've honestly had to make sure I know if it's triggering, right? So there are some things that can be triggering, so you have to choose to unfollow them. But I prefer to follow people that are doctors or like somehow certified medically instead of just influencers or whatever, or just like someone like me sharing my journey, right? Like it's awesome to watch, but like those are the ones that can be kind of triggering versus like informational stuff. Like, and then some of them can like be hard too. Like if you follow Chris Beats Cancer, like that doesn't necessarily always align with the metabolic approach. So like you have to kind of know which path you're choosing and block out the rest, because otherwise it just gets muddy, right?
Take the pieces that resonate with you, leave the ones behind that don't.
Right.
And you can follow the people that are closer to that message. And again, they're still going to, if everybody had every answer, there would be no cancer. So, just knowing that there are different approaches, and you have to do constantly, since you're your own unique individual, you have to be checking in with yourself. Does what they're saying resonate? Am I curious enough to look into that a little more? Or is that just something I'm not even going to mess with right now?
Right. Yeah. Because I actually did look into Chris Beats Cancer, and I also looked into a more lymphatic way of Dr. Morse is his name, but when that's like eating fruit for a long time. And I knew, like, at first I was like, oh, it makes sense. But then I was like, this doesn't really work. Like, it doesn't resonate with what I'm doing. It's kind of like completely opposite of what I've learned and feel is right. So I had to, that was a lot to unpack at the beginning because you're trying to find your path, right? So you gotta learn all the ways and then decide. And that is overwhelming, but you kind of gotta sift through it to know.
Yeah, totally. And I think finding the integrative practitioners that can help steer you into better paths, people that have been on the path or that know of it, versus just trying to blindly find everything on your own. Because yes, you will go on Google and you'll see a fruit diet, you'll see a vegan diet, you'll see a keto diet, a carnivore, and you'll be like, what am I supposed to do? And it just stops people before they can even start. And it's really about, maybe this worked for someone, an all fruit diet, or maybe it was their mind, or maybe it was the type of cancer they had, or maybe, right?
Right.
It wasn't what you are going through. So it's really like finding a provider that can look at your genes and SNPs and find that diet that's really literally made for you.
Right. I totally agree with that.
Is there any misconceptions on integrative cancer that you want to clear up for people?
I feel like I was actually just thinking that, and now it slipped my mind. I don't know. I would have to think about this. Yes, of course.
Just think about like your friends and family when you were kind of fearful to tell them what you were doing. What were the misconceptions that they maybe had that you have now taught them? Like, this is what you thought, but that's not correct.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on, I think it's somewhat generational too, right? On how people view things. But, you've always grown up to be told that the doctors know what, like that's who you listen to, that's where you go to. And I've always kind of been that person that's like, even when my kids were sick, I'm like, okay, if I go, what are they going to do? Are they going to give them a medication? Okay, I'm probably not going to go then. Like, is there a way that they can heal on their own? Because I've always learned that, like, once your body goes through the hard stuff, it heals and it's even better, right? So, like, every time my kids got sick, it was hard because, like, you watch them struggle a little bit longer than you would if you threw a medication at them. But at the end of it, they were always better, and their immune system's way better. Like, my kids are never sick.
Can we just chat about that just quickly? Like, when someone, let's say, has a fever, especially a kid, we hate to see them struggling and having a fever, but that our bodies know how high it can handle it to be able to burn off whatever infection is going on in their body. So when we suppress it with Tylenol or ibuprofen or anything like that, we're actually suppressing our immune response. So our body doesn't know the strength that it can have because we're constantly suppressing it with medications. So being empowered with our children or ourselves to be like, what is supposed to be natural healing? And it just throwing drugs at it, like nature didn't make drugs like to suppress our fevers. It just didn't do that. It has supportive therapies, of course, but our immune systems are meant to fuel that. And so thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, it's been a big thing for me just raising the kids. Like, and it was hard. I mean, it's kind of like the whole diagnosis thing. It's like you're going against the norm, right? And like you're saying, like asking about this, like what you want people to know is like, yeah, you're going against the norm. But like, I think once you learn how powerful the body is in healing, like you don't need the drugs that are going to cause side effects, So it's, I don't know, it's empowering once you learn how powerful the body really is. Like even if you think about how a baby's created, right? Like not to go deep here, but it's like, it's so incredible. So
sometimes we got to get out of our own way. And like you said, sometimes less is more.
Yeah. And you just gotta be patient.
and
that's another thing too with like this journey, so many people are constantly wanting to know, like, where are you at? How are things going and whatever. And, it's like you're constantly looking at your labs to see where you need to pivot and where you need to make these changes. And it's not just a like quick fix. It's like it's a long journey. It didn't happen overnight. It's not going away overnight.
Thank you. Yes. Thanks for saying that. And that's for anybody, whether it's cancer or chronic illness. When people say, oh, you look so good, how are you doing? I'm like, work in progress.
Right.
Because how good can you stand it? My friend Christina says that, how good can you stand it? And that's the thing, is like, no matter if I'm feeling good, well, can I feel better?
Right.
Can I do something better? Like that. So there's always something that I feel like that we can be doing in life to be proactive with our health. And it's always going to be a journey. Whoever gets a diagnosis like this, it's so many layers, and it will take us a lifetime to walk through this path. It's walking with us. It's not like we're not trying to beat something. We're like trying to live in harmony with it.
Right.
You want to live in harmony with your cancer cells so that they don't ever want to come out and play. They're just doing their own little thing, So I want to live where my body's like, I don't need to recognize those cells as foreign, like there's always healing that will take place, and that's part of our journey.
Absolutely.
Okay, lastly, if there was one message that could reach every person listening,
oh man,
what would it be?
That's tough. I really should have prepared for this one.
I know. I just full disclosure. This I wrote these this morning. These questions. Karli has no idea what I'm asking her today, but that's the beauty of this podcast, is having real conversations with real humans.
Yeah.
And like, this has been such a beautiful podcast because you're just so real and authentic.
I was gonna say, it's just like authentic sharing, and that always feels good when it doesn't feel like you're, being told what to say or whatever.
Totally.
But man, my message, that's hard, but just honestly knowing that our bodies are incredible, and to trust your intuition and to really dive into learning what that is, because I think it's so easy to just blame or shame or do whatever, but like really learning, you can have more compassion for other people, and I think that's so huge. And then just like honestly following your dreams. Like, life's short, and I think like one thing that's really helped me through this too is knowing that like I can play this pity party, woe is me, and this sucks, because I mean, yeah, it does, right? Like no one wants a diagnosis.
Yes.
But I always have too been like, I am still given another day. Like, I could have been smacked by a semi on the highway, and I wouldn't even have to think about, oh no, what if this happens? Like, it just happens in a blink of an eye, and your life can be gone or you're completely altered. And I think like knowing that I have another day to do better, or to learn, or to heal, or to do whatever, like that's a gift. And it's so underrated and taken for granted, right? Like it's once you, I don't know if it's the diagnosis that kind of slaps you or whatever, but it's always just kind of helped me be an anchor through it all of like, hey, this sucks, but one, it can always be worse.
Yes.
And two, like I'm becoming a better person. And I don't know, it might have actually been you. I'm pretty sure it was you. But just like my journey, no matter how hard it is, right? Like, or hard it could be or whatever, like whether things didn't go the way I wanted it to or whatever, that journey is something that will help me like be able to share my story with someone else. So like, yeah, it might not be black and white, or it might not be, simple.
Yeah.
But all of the pieces in the middle are what going to help me help other people.
Oh my gosh. I love this. Your kids and your hubby are so lucky to have you in their life, and I'm so blessed to have you in my life, and I'm just really excited for the patients that I serve here to get a little taste of you as we go forward through this adventure together too. So thank you so much for being here, Karli.
Thank you.
Can't wait to have you on again.
It was awesome. Thank you.
Right. Have a great day.